Having a mentor is extremely important. Now, I will say, getting into the business through my own experience, I didn't have many mentors to get me into it. But once I became acclimated with the Hollywood industry and what it was all about, I had two mentors that I chose to be the blueprint, the model that I would somewhat try to model my career after. One being Robert Townsend, the wonderful Robert Townsend, who showed me a gift very early on in my career. And the other would be Mr. Keenan Ivory Wayans, who, with both of these guys, the utmost respect. They're pretty much my heroes. So I've had several mentors, and I can't, of course, I have to always throw in the name Martin Lawrence because he's my friend, but he's also one of my heroes. But I wanted to talk a little bit about what that means to have a mentor. What it means when you have a mentor is it means that you have someone that you can rely on to give you advice, to be your sounding board when you are stuck and you can't figure out what the next move is, or when you're just getting in and you want to really understand what it's really about. So I think the best way to get a mentor is to, first of all, figure out what it is that you're trying to accomplish in this industry, what you want to learn, who you want to model yourself after. If it's someone that you admire from afar, how do you get to know that person? And I think that people have an innate ability to want to help other people. If you don't, well, it's a very selfish thing, and I don't know how far you'll go with that mentality, but having that mentorship mentality is something that I think propels a person to the next level. It's like each one teach one, and then they reach one, if that makes any sense. So with my mentorship, the reason I use Robert Townsend as an example is because when I first met Robert Townsend, I was a 19-year-old kid in LA with no direction. I had a little bit of exposure to the television and film industry, but I really knew nothing about it. Just the little bit of exposure that I had to it through different friends, and I've spoken about that in other episodes. But Robert was the one factor, the connector that made it all change for me. I wanted to walk like him. I wanted to dress like Robert. I wanted to be like him. He possessed everything that I was looking for in a mentor. I wanted to try stand-up comedy, and I did, and it wasn't necessarily the medium that I enjoyed. I preferred the behind the scenes, but then look at that. Robert was a behind the scenes artist as well. He was a fantastic director, but he wrote, produced, and directed his own film, Hollywood Shuffle, which I happen to have been a part of that wonderful experience, and that's how I got in this business as a professional in the first place. So Robert was, not only was he a great guy because of what he had done and his accomplishments, but he was also great in that he was a very positive guy. He was a very nice guy. He was a guy that had a very clean reputation, and I've always been about keeping my reputation clean if I can. And so Robert was just a somewhat of a big brother figure to me. And once I really got his attention and he knew my name, I knew that I was on the right track because I had got this person's attention, and I looked to him for guidance. I could always ask Robert a question. I could always call him up, and he was always blatantly honest with me whether I liked the answer or whether I didn't. So I think that Robert being my mentor is really what propelled me to not just be in the industry as an actor or as a writer, or as a producer or as a director. He encompassed all of these things. And so that's what I wanted to do. The very first day I met Robert, I told him that I wanted to do what he did. I wanted to be a writer, producer, director, and all of that stuff. And he says to me, Slow down, pal. You got to pick one. My suggestion would be to you to start out as an actor. Now, I don't know if that's what you want to do, but I think you should start out that way. And the reason he told me that was because acting has no prerequisites. Anybody can become an actor. It has absolutely no prerequisites. You can do, you can be an actor from the day you're born doing commercials and stuff like that. So he knew that that was the easiest route for me to get in. Now, using that advice, of course, I went ahead and got into SAG through his guidance, and I started acting. Never really felt comfortable as primarily being an actor. I wanted to be more diverse, but I did it as a means to get me to the next level. And so then from acting, I started hanging out on different TV sets and different movie sets. I got exposure to all the major lots in Hollywood, like Universal, Warner Brothers, Disney, Fox, and I worked on all of these lots in the late 80s and the early 90s. And so I became acclimated to the Hollywood system. And again, along the way, I could always talk to Robert. And just to reiterate how important Robert's approval was to me, I saw him recently at they honored him at an event, and I saw Robert, and it was a full circle moment in that he told me when I saw him how proud he was of me, and told me that it's kind of emotional because it was literally I seeked his approval for all those years, and for him to just tell me that I did it and he was very proud of me, it meant that the mentorship made a full circle, and he's still one of my heroes today. Now, when we talk a little bit about Keenan Ivory Wayans, it was a different relationship because Keenan was a very fun guy, and Keenan took me under his wing as I felt like I was one of his younger siblings. And of course, you all know about who Sean and Marlon Wayans are. I was very tight with those guys in the late 80s and the 90s. And so we forged a great friendship. So I had access to Keenan, more access than I had to Robert. I mean, I remember Keenan making great turkey burgers in his kitchen and inviting me over to his house while he was writing at his kitchen table. And Keenan told me something one time. I said to Keenan, I said, hey, if I ever make it in this business as an actor or a writer, and he stopped me and he said, it's not about if you make it. You have to change your mentality. It's when you make it. Start saying that. Don't say if anymore. It's when you make it. And I told him, well, my dad always told me that I should always have something to fall back on, a plan B. And Keenan said, well, you know what? Kudos to your dad. That's fantastic that he would say that. But my mentality is you can have a plan B, because if you have something to fall back on, you're going to fall back on it because it's a cushion. You now need to be thinking, move ahead. Don't ask any questions. Don't question your moves. Don't question the trajectory in which you're going. Just go. You have plenty of time when you get old to reflect and look back on what you've done. So I always looked at that as great sound advice. And Keenan, again, was a really good sounding board because he was, one of the older siblings in his own household. So he had all these younger brothers and sisters that he had to be an example for. And I was like, in my opinion, a surrogate brother in that he's always gave me high praises. He always looked at me a little different than he did all the other young actors that were out there that were trying to get advice from him. He gave me advice to get on stage for the very first time, and Sean Wayans and I, we broke our teeth doing stand-up the same night at the Laugh Factory in Hollywood, and we could not wait to get back to Keenan's house to play back the audio recordings that we did of our sets. I wish I still had that stuff. But these guys were great sounding boards for me. They were great examples, great men that I could look up to and really, really respect. It's very important that you try to find a mentor. I have mentored many people in this business, and I continue to do so to this very day because, again, it's very important for us to help the ones that are trying to get in. Anytime I work with somebody and I do something for them to help them excel in this career, I always tell them, you don't owe me anything. But the one thing, if you did owe me, is that because I helped you, I need you to at least help 2 more people and pass that along, because that's paying it forward. And that's what I'm all about. So mentorship doesn't necessarily have to be someone that you even know. It might be the author of a book, or it may be somebody that you saw in a documentary, and then you try to follow their workload and see what they've done in the past. And so that's another form of mentorship. So in closing, I just want to say that mentorship is probably one of the most important aspects that you can have in the Hollywood industry. So let's talk a little bit about how you go about getting a mentor. Now, there are several ways to do that. One would be going to different seminars. One would be to pay close attention to your subject, meaning the person that you want as your mentor, and find out what that person is doing publicly. If they're doing public speaking, you show up at that event. If they're having a party, you show up at that event. What I did with Robert was I met him and I worked with him, but I still wasn't sure that he knew what I was all about. So I made it my mission to find out what he was doing on a daily and just show up so he could see my face and associate my face to the name and all those kinds of different tricks, because there are several tricks to the trade. But the reality of it is you have to show up in order to really be taken seriously, and then that relationship starts to grow. And so basically you have to be able to approach a person in a non-threatening way, in a non-aggressive way, and in a very humble way, in order for them to see that they can work with you and help you along the way. Now, one of the easiest ways to get a mentor is to offer your services for free. When you meet someone, recently I told one of my nephews was with me, and we were hanging out at some party, and Michael Bay, who directed the original Bad Boys movie and so many other movies at this point, Michael Bay was there, and I told my nephew, hey, why don't you walk over to Michael Bay and just offer your services for free? So my nephew was fearless. My young nephew Ronald, he walks over to Michael Bay at the Bad Boys 4 premiere recently, and he says, hey, Michael, my name is Ronald Evans, and I want you to be my mentor. And he said, Michael Bay just kind of laughed and said, yeah, buddy, everybody wants that. He goes, I'd like to offer my services for free. I'd like to work for you for a year, and I don't want anything. And Michael, he changed his demeanor and said, oh, wow, this guy's serious. He said, well, you know what? Now's not the best time to talk to me because we've been drinking a little bit, and I want to make sure that I remember what I said. He said, but call me on Monday, and maybe we can get into it. So they exchanged information. I don't know where that went, but I will use that as a great example of how to approach someone in a very humble way and ask for what you want. One thing you have to do in this industry, you have to ask for what you want, because a closed mouth will not get fed. And you'll learn that through other mentorship programs. Lastly, there is a series on online called Masterclass, and where you see a lot of industry professionals really giving in-depth master classes, conversations with industry insiders that are giving real sound advice on how to break into different aspects of the industry. So again, when choosing a mentor, be careful who you choose. Make sure that that person has a great reputation. Make sure that person knows more than you know, and that person is willing to teach you the gift that you're trying to obtain. So, and with that said, that's it. That's all. I'm your man, Bentley Kyle Evans, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Hollywood Blueprint.